Hello there, mystery fans. Did you know that we depend on your support to keep making Bust or Trust?
If you subscribe and support Bust or Trust on Patreon or Apple Podcasts, you'll get access to weekly subscriber bonus episodes with extra evidence, ad-free listening, and early access to all our episodes.
And you'll get our weekly newsletter full of fun facts, book recommendations, fun new words, and a monthly colouring poster to print at home, featuring some of the weirdest and wildest mysteries we've investigated.
To support the show and get access to all these great goodies, just click subscribe in Apple Podcasts, subscribe to Patreon via Spotify, or visit patreon.com/Bust or Trust podcast. Or for more information, visit our website at bustortrust.com.
Hello, parents, homeschoolers, and teachers. Trusty narrator here from the Who Smarted podcast. Our 15-minute episodes are perfect for car rides, bedtime, break time, class time, or anytime. We make learning science and history fun and funny for 7 to 11-year-olds with new episodes every week. Look for Who Smarted on any podcast platform or at whosmarted.com. And teachers get a free subscription to our ad-free version by clicking educators at whosmarted.com.
Hello and welcome to Bust or Trust, a kids' mystery podcast. I'm Tiernan.
And I'm Athena. Bust or Trust is the podcast where we unravel the world's greatest mysteries with help from you, our chief detectives.
We present all the best evidence and then ask you to decide. Which team are you on?
Are you a myth buster, like me?
Or are you a myth truster, like me? We look into all sorts of strange stories from around the world. No mystery is too big for us. Like, when magicians say they'll make something disappear into thin air, why can't they make things disappear into thick air?
That's because if the air is thick, it's foggy, and you can't see anything in the first place.
That makes sense. Anyway, we'll tell you at the end of the show just how to get in touch, so you can let us know if you're on Team Buster or the best one, Team Truster.
So, chief detectives, get ready to take notes and start putting together your case, while we have a quick word with the grown-ups.
The case.
Oh no, my feather tickled my nose. Achoo!
Gesundheit, bless you. Hold on, why are you sticking feathers to your arm?
Not just my arm, I'm going to be entirely covered in feathers from head to toe.
Okay. No, I mean it's not okay. It's a strange thing to do, and there are feathers everywhere. And you haven't answered my question. Why are you doing that?
Because this week we're looking at the case of the Bunyip, a scary creature that's said to live in southeastern Australia, hiding in swamps and creeks. And people say it's a man-eating monster.
Right, so you're making yourself more ticklish. Why?
Well, I am a man, and so I thought there is no way the Bunyip will eat me if it thinks I'm a giant chicken.
I see. As the Bunyip is a mythical creature that probably doesn't exist, I think you're safe. Although, what if it eats chickens too?
Oh no, I hadn't thought of that. Ow! Only 321 feathers to go.
You get started, and I guess I'd better tell the chief detectives all about the Bunyip.
Ow!
The Bunyip has been part of the oral traditions of the Aborigines, the native people of Australia, for many years. Its name has been traced to the Wemba Wemba language of the Aborigines in southeastern Australia, in the state known as Victoria. But studies show there are tales about variations of the Bunyip all across the country. Its name is translated as meaning devil or evil spirit, and it's often seen as a protector of the water.
That's better. There are a few different descriptions of the Bunyip, but the most common is that it looks a bit like a long dog or seal, about 4 to 6 foot long, with a shaggy black or brown coat. It has a face like a bulldog, but whiskers like a seal, and no tail. The other popular description is of a similar seal-like creature, but it's much bigger, between 5 and 15 feet long. It has a small head, long neck, small tusks, and a mane. They're said to be amphibious, nocturnal, meaning they only come out at night, and they mostly live in lakes, rivers, and swamps. Many stories say they eat crayfish, but some describe them as having a taste for humans, particularly women and children. Oh, phew. Although, Athena, maybe you need these feathers then.
I don't think so, because the bunyip is largely thought of as a mythical creature existing in Aboriginal oral traditions. But when early European settlers arrived in Australia, the idea that the bunyip might really exist became popular. Alleged sightings and even remains of the bunyip has supposedly been found, but there is still no scientific evidence that it's real.
Which is why today we are going to prove the bunyip exists. And if any chief detectives or crayfish out there are worried about being a bunyip snack, well, I've got some spare feathers you can have.
A crayfish with feathers would look so weird. And don't worry, chief detectives. There's no way the bunyip exists for real, as you'll see.
This evidence might make you say bunyip rather than bun-nope. On to the first piece of evidence.
First piece of evidence.
Written accounts of the bunyip date back to 1845, when the Geelong Advertiser, an Australian local paper, announced the headline, "Wonderful discovery of a new animal." According to the article, some fossils had been found and shown to an Aboriginal person. The man said that they were from a bunyip that he himself had seen. He did a drawing of it on request, and the journalist describes it as uniting the characteristics of a bird and of an alligator. It has a head resembling an emu with a long bill, at the extremity of which is a transverse projection on each side with serrated edges like the bone of a stingray. Its body and legs partake of the nature of the alligator.
The common description of a bunyip that we mentioned earlier makes it sound more like a seal. So this sounds like an entirely different creature. And this article also said the bunyip laid large blue eggs. Australian writer Carl Brandt has suggested that maybe what people thought was a bunyip was actually a cassowary. They are large flightless birds found in Australia and Indonesia that do have a head resembling an emu and a long beak with serrated edges. It's very possible that European settlers didn't know what they were when they first arrived in Australia, and they thought they were the bunyip they'd heard about from Aboriginal tales.
Or maybe it doesn't sound like the other description of the bunyip because the man wasn't very good at drawing. The article goes on to mention the story of an Aboriginal woman that was killed by a bunyip and a man called Mumba Ran who showed them deep scars on his chest that he said were made by the creature.
The article gave no proof that the fossils it mentioned really existed, and apart from the man with the scars, which could have been caused by a number of creatures, including a cassowary, no one else is named. Newspapers often like to print sensationalist stories. That means news that is shocking or exciting rather than serious. It's very hard to take the bunyip fossil story as serious proof, when it's probably just a good tale to help sell the newspaper.
But this was just the first. There are several other early written accounts about the bunyip too. In 1852, escaped convict William Buckley wrote a biography about the 30 years he spent living with the Wathaurong Aboriginal people near Melbourne. In one part, he mentions going to Lake Modawari and says there lives an extraordinary amphibious animal which natives call the bunyip. He goes on to say, "I could never see any part except the back, which appeared to be covered with feathers of a dusky grey colour. It seemed to be about the size of a full-grown calf. I could never learn from any of the natives that they had seen either the head or the tail." Buckley says he too had heard the story of the Aboriginal woman that was killed by a bunyip and that there are many of them in the Barron River.
It doesn't sound like William Buckley or the Aboriginal people he was with could see what it was very clearly at all, so it's hard to say what they actually saw. Again, it sounds very likely that what he saw was a cassowary.
I suppose I should be pleased that you're not just blaming this one on bears.
Well, maybe it's several koalas working as a team. Joke, no way. That'd be too adorable to be scary.
That is true. This account doesn't sound like a cassowary or several koalas at all. In 1857, several Australian newspapers reported on the drawings of British artist Edwin Stockler. Edwin had sketched things that he'd seen as he travelled down the Murray and Goulburn rivers, both of which are in southeastern Australia. Some of the accounts said his drawings showed a creature with small fins attached to its shoulders, a long swan-like neck, a head like a bulldog, and a strange bag under its chin like a pelican might have. It was also covered in glossy black hair. Another newspaper said they looked like a cross between a sea serpent and a water vole. Edwin Stockler said he didn't get too close to them as the Aboriginal people had warned him that they were dangerous.
He also never referred to them as bunyips. That was the newspapers being sensationalist again. Edwin Stockler announced that he would make a life-size portrait of the animal. It took him 4 years, and it was said to be a mile long, made up of 70 different pictures. Sadly, it no longer exists. Otherwise, we could see for ourselves what the creature was. I'm pretty certain it's not a bunyip, though, especially as Edwin Stockler didn't think so either.
Just because he didn't say it was a bunyip doesn't mean it wasn't a bunyip. He was an artist, not an animal expert. And quite a lot of people over the years have seen and also heard some very strange things.
Second piece of evidence.
The accounts in the newspapers weren't the only recorded sightings of the bunyip. From the mid-1800s until the mid-1900s, as European settlers arrived, people reported seeing the bunyip. But here are two strange cases in particular. One is the Thargomindah bunyip. In 1941, several people reported seeing a strange creature at the Dinevor Lakes, near a town in Queensland called Thargomindah. There had been several days of heavy rain when people saw what they described as a black-headed creature poking its face 35 to 40 centimetres above the water. One witness, a postal inspector called Mr. J.G. Utt, said, "I'm inclined to think it must be a seal, but that's only a guess. What impressed me mostly about the animal was that it showed much shrewdness and curiosity." Other theories were that it was a wombat that had unusually taken to water, a large duck-billed platypus, a swimming dingo, a floating stick, or maybe a wild pig that had developed amphibious habits. But no one was able to figure it out. An official investigation was meant to be carried out, but there was a by-election in town, and so they didn't have the resources to look into it until that was done. However, 2 locals were made honorary protectors of the fauna in the Dinevor Lake Sanctuary, which is nice.
That is nice. What a great job that would be, just getting to chill and look at all the amazing wildlife. And Australia does have amazing wildlife, much of which is thought to have been what the people actually saw when they said they'd spotted a bunyip. Seals, duck-billed platypuses and saltwater crocodiles all live in the waterways and swamps of southeastern Australia, so it could have easily been any one of those.
It's easy to say that just because all they saw was a little head poking out of the water, that it was just a seal or duck-billed platypus. But it could also have been a bunyip, mistaken for normal everyday wildlife. And it's not just what people have seen of the bunyip, it's also what they've heard. Check out the second strange case. In the early 1930s, a group of railway workers ran away terrified after hearing strange noises coming from a swamp near the village of Burrawang. The noise got louder and louder until, in the 1960s, the roar of the Burrawang bunyip was well known, with one local bartender saying it was so loud it would shake the bottles on the shelf. That must have been scary.
Yeah, very scary. Broken glass is very dangerous. Those sounds stopped completely in 1974 when the swamp was drained. So, it's very likely the big bellowing roar was made by the peatland. That's a type of wetland that has a layer of peat soil. This means it expands when it's hot and contracts when it's cool, sometimes trapping and releasing air and gases, which can, you've guessed it, make strange sounds. But there is also another explanation.
Oh, is it that when the swamp was drained, the bunyip had to move house to somewhere a bit more soggy?
No, but I do feel sorry for any swamp creature that has had its house drained away. That can't be fun. The other explanation is the bunyip bird. This is an endangered and very secretive type of bird that lives in the Australian wetlands. It's been called the bunyip bird because they are very hard to see due to some brilliant camouflaging skills, but also because its call is a weird, low, booming, gulping sound that could very well have been mistaken for some sort of creature lurking in the swamps.
I feel like the bunyip has had their cover sorted, with all these creatures taking the credit for it. But I don't think even you would have a bone to pick with the final piece of evidence.
Third piece of evidence.
In 1846, a very unusual skull was presented to the Australian Museum in Sydney. A settler in New South Wales had found it and said it was from something unknown to science. It had one eye, drooping ears, and shaggy fur. Many people thought it was certainly a bunyip. Sadly, the skull is now lost, so no one can know for sure what it was from.
But they did test it at the time, and when they got the results, experts said it was definitely a fraud that had been made from a mix of fur, horsebone and plaster. But look, I'll help you out a bit, Tiernan. There was one theory that the bunyip, or something like it, was once real, a very long time ago.
Really? Go Team Truster!
Aboriginal peoples would have existed at the same time as creatures known as megafauna. These are huge early mammals that are now long extinct, but at one point roamed the earth. For example, you might have heard of the woolly mammoth or the saber-toothed tiger. Those are two types of megafauna. Another one that existed in Australia was the Diprotodon, or giant wombat. It was the largest marsupial to ever have lived, and it would have been nearly 6 foot tall and over 13 feet long. Lots of their fossils have been found in dried up lakes and riverbeds. So there's every chance Aboriginal people living alongside them told tales of this strange creature that would live on land and water. That story has been passed down and combined with a moral about protecting the waterways to create the tale of the bunyip we now know.
I think it's incredible that stories travel through time like that. Can you even imagine telling a story and knowing it would keep being told for thousands of years?
Oh, it would be amazing. And the Aboriginal people are so skilled at storytelling. I bet if I tried it, someone would ruin it along the way for sure.
Did I ever tell you about the time when me and Gary were at the duck pond?
No, what happened?
Well, there was this one duck, a mallard with a bright green head, that looked really angry. And when we tried to feed it oats like they recommend, it did a sort of strange hissing quack. It made Gary really jump. He was holding some spicy paprika flavoured crisps because he loves those, and they went everywhere, all up in the air. Anyway, next thing you know, the ducks gobbled them up before giving a polite whack as if to say thanks. Who knew that ducks like crisps, eh? So funny. Well, that's the last time we took them oats. From then on, Gary would turn up with different flavours of snacks. I remember our old scout leader telling this story about the time he got attacked by 100 ducks because of some crisps. Shall I tell you?
Yes, please. What? Tell us.
Okay, so he was with his friend Gloria, I think, and they were at a lake trying to give the ducks some bread.
Our teacher said you're meant to give them oats.
I know, but this was in the old days when no one had a clue. Anyway, they go to give this one duck some bread, but Gloria is holding a whole roast dinner for some reason. Before they know it, it does this hissing quack, and suddenly 100 ducks appear trying to eat Gloria's roast dinner. And they did, and they ate Gloria too. Night, night, sweet dreams.
The tale goes that one lone man called Gareth went to the sea and threw a roast dinner into it, and out of the sea a 600-foot mutant duck monster appeared. It ate the man and then the nearest town and then flew off into the sunset, never to be seen again. The tale says that this mountain we are now on...
This one right here?
Yes, this very one. Well, that was where the giant monster duck fell asleep and turned into stone.
Ooh. But Uncle?
Yes, 0101113.
What is a duck?
Yes, good question. They have been extinct for many years. I think they were like a blue otter with a vacuum cleaner for a head.
Whoa, that's so cool. I wish I'd seen one. Was that story true?
Of course, it's been passed down for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Oh.
Oh, that last story was the best one, though.
Definitely. I would read a whole book about 600-foot monster ducks. It could be a quaction adventure story.
Sounds a bit quackers to me. You know who always gets a story right, though? Our chief detectives. And now they have to decide.
Does the bunyip really exist or not?
Time for an evidence recap.
Evidence recap.
The first piece of evidence is the written accounts published in Australian newspapers in the mid-1800s that give many examples of encounters with the bunyip, including a man who had wounds from a bunyip attack, an ex-convict who wrote about a strange creature in a lake that had dusky grey feathers, and an artist who drew pictures of animals he saw on his travels across Australian rivers, including one with a long neck and the face of a bulldog.
Newspapers like sensationalist stories, which means tales that are shocking and exciting but might not be factual. A writer called Carl Brandt thinks that what many people have seen and thought was a bunyip was actually a cassowary, a type of large, flightless bird.
The second piece of evidence is the many sightings of the bunyip, like in the town called Thargomindah, where many people saw a strange black-headed creature in the lakes. Or in Burrawang, where people often heard the bunyip's roar coming from the swamp, which was so strong it made the bottles at a local bar shake.
It's thought that a lot of bunyip sightings are just from people misunderstanding what wildlife they have spotted. Australia is full of amazing wildlife, and as well as the cassowary, many bunyips are now understood to have been duck-billed platypuses, dingoes, or even wild pigs. And the roar was almost certainly from the gases and air released from a peat soil swamp as the sound stopped as soon as it was drained. Or a bunyip bird, which lives in the swamps and has a loud, bellowing call.
The third piece of evidence is the unusual skull that was brought to the Australian Museum in Sydney. It was from a creature with one eye, fur and drooping ears. Many said it was from a bunyip.
The skull was proven to be a fake made with horse bone, plaster and fur. There is one theory that the bunyip was real, but was an ancient giant platypus called a diprotodon. Aboriginal oral traditions have been passed down for thousands of years. That means it's possible that Aboriginal ancestors lived alongside the diprotodon, and the bunyip stories were actually about them.
So now we're handing it over to you, Chief Detectives.
What do you think? Are you a bunyip mythbuster?
Or a bunyip myth truster? Get in touch and let us know your thoughts, and most importantly, which side you're on. There'll be tales told for many years about this Team Truster win.
Nah, your case is murkier than the swamps the bunyip doesn't live in. Team Buster all the way. Send us your voice notes with an explanation of why you're a myth truster or mythbuster when it comes to whether the bunyip exists or not.
All you have to do is ask your grown-ups to help you email us your voice notes or thoughts to hello@bustortrust.com.
Tell us your name, age, what you think all the evidence means, and please make sure your grown-ups give us permission to use your voice notes or emails in our next episode.
We won't always be able to use all of them,
but we do love to hear them, and here are some thoughts from you lot, our chief detectives, on the last few episodes.
Hi, my name's Kavitha. I live in the United States, and I'm Buster on the Trojan Wool. Because I don't think that the gods that it talks about in your podcast is real. And I also don't think that the horse that they thought was a present is real. And I love your podcast so much.
Well, there you go. Take her on then. She doesn't think it's real. Tiernan, what you got to say to that?
She just said the gods weren't real, and the big Trojan horse, which I have to say, like, if you're giving someone a toy horse as a present, it seems a bit silly for it to be so big. Like, I'd have thought maybe it's more like a little rocking horse and just one little guy hid inside it.
Kavitha 1, Tiernan 0. Yeah.
Thanks for listening, Kavitha.
Hello, I am Charlie. I am 10 years old, and I am a alien myth truster because I really like aliens, and I love this podcast.
Charlie, you are an alien myth truster. Absolutely brilliant. And I like that your reason for being an alien myth truster is because you like aliens. Do you know what? I think I'd like them too. I just really need one of them to show up so we can show everyone else that they're brilliant as well.
So I guess if you like something and you love it, it's real.
Yeah, I reckon so.
I like and love that bears are the cause of everything. I win!
Oh, that's not fair.
I win!
I like cakes. Is one going to appear?
Still waiting. Thanks to you guys. We make a fantastic team, the best listeners ever.
Very, very best listeners in the whole world. And if you enjoyed the show, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more great episodes.
We love to hear what you think. So please do rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps more detectives find Bust or Trust. And of course, we'll read out some of your comments on the show.
Plus, if you pay to subscribe to Bust or Trust on Apple Podcasts or our patreon.com/Bust or Trust page, then you get to hear extended episodes with bonus evidence, get our weekly newsletter, monthly colouring sheets, and we'll also give you a shout out on the show too.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for more Bust or Trust.
Athena, I've had a new idea.
What on earth are you dressed up as now? Oh, are those claws?
A crayfish. I've realised that maybe I should dress like a giant crayfish to lure the Bunyip out so I can prove it exists and woohoo, Team Truster wins.
I see. Good plan. But you forgot one thing.
What's that?
How are you going to use the door handle if you've got claws for hands?
Oh, easy, I'll just... dagnabbit.
Well, I did prawn you. Hey subscribers, thanks for sticking around.
If you haven't made your mind up yet, I've got even more evidence for you about the Bunyip.
And I've got more fun facts.
More Bunyip facts, please, Athena.
On it. In the main episode, I mentioned that there is a theory that the Bunyip was actually a type of megafauna called a diprotodon. Megafauna were huge prehistoric mammals that existed tens of thousands of years ago, but Aboriginal oral tradition has been passed down through so many generations they could very well have been telling tales about the diprotodon, which was like a giant wombat. But actually, lots of megafauna existed in Australia during the time Aboriginal ancestors were alive, and there are 3 other kinds that it's thought may have influenced the creation of the Bunyip. The Zygomaturus was over 8 feet tall and weighed over 700 kilograms, the same as 7 large fridges.
Wow, that is a lot of food.
Oh, it is, and I bet at that size, the Zygomaturus needed to eat 7 fridges worth of food a day too. Though, it was probably a plant eater. Like the diprotodon, the Zygomaturus is thought to be an ancestor of the wombat, looking like a giant version of one, with a bigger nose. Just like the Bunyip, it mostly lived in swamps. Then, there was the Nototherium, which is like a smaller diprotodon and was even closer to the wombats that exist in Australia today. And then the Palakestes, which was the size of a horse with 4 very powerful legs. Its front legs had claws like a kangaroo, which would have made it really easy to strip out the bark from trees. It had a long tongue like a giraffe or a tapir, and it ate mainly shrubs and roots.
Oh, I like these ones. They're like a giant cross between a sloth and a bear. I'm sad these creatures don't exist anymore.
But they were all so big. Can you imagine how difficult life would be if these huge wombats running around, pushing over trees?
Well, you say it would be difficult, but think of how many times you could cancel doing stuff because, oh, sorry, I can't make it now because a Zygomaturus is blocking the road again while it eats a hedge.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Bring back megafauna so we can do less. Now, do you have any new Bunyip evidence, Tiernan?
Sort of. This is kind of fun, maybe. In December 2024, a photographer posted a picture online of a sign he'd driven past outside of Melbourne that said "Slow down 4" and then had a silhouette of a very strange-looking creature. The photographer said he didn't know what the creature was and didn't stick around long enough to find out. People commented that it was definitely a Bunyip, or at least one version of the Bunyip.
Now that is an excellent prank.
Yes, it is. Well, unless they were really warning people that a Bunyip might cross the road.
Why did a Bunyip cross the road?
To get to the other swamp?
Oh, that's a rubbish joke.
You're right, it is. OK, this evidence is a bit more serious, but in Victoria Grampians National Park, a ranger rediscovered a sacred Aboriginal shelter in 2019. In it are many faded markings and drawings, one of which shows a large creature with thick flipper-like feet. There is a small human figure next to it, to show that the Bunyip is the size of a whale. The paintings are thought to be over 10,000 years old.
Oh, that is amazing. It must have been so cool to find something like that. But the large beast could easily have been one of the megafauna that I mentioned.
Maybe, or something else entirely.
Or it could be another warning sign prank.
A 10,000-year-old prank. Wow. I want to draw a monster and hope that in the year 12,025, someone thinks it's a creature that we had to run away from.
Oh, don't go drawing on rocks. There must be something else that lasts for ages. Oh, I know. Draw it on a Parmesan cheese.
Oh, great idea. They never go off.
Just make sure it's nowhere near anyone's pasta or you'll have no chance. That's it for our subscriber bonus. Thanks for listening and a huge thanks for subscribing. Your subscriptions help us make more episodes of Bust or Trust. We'll see you next time for another exciting investigation.